It's Rudeus Greyrat's 10th birthday, and for a man who spent his previous life as a shut-in and died a failure at 34, that's actually something worth celebrating. Not because he's growing up exactly, more because he's smart enough to notice that everyone in the manor is acting deeply, obviously, hilariously suspicious. The decorations are too cheerful, the maids keep exchanging glances, and Ghislaine, stoic, battle-hardened Sword King Ghislaine Dedoldia, a woman who could cut a charging warhorse in half without breaking a sweat, is standing in his doorway with the nervous energy of a person trying very hard not to look nervous. "Could you show me some Saint-Tier magic?" she asks, her tail rigid as a flagpole. Now, Rudeus has known Ghislaine for 3 years. She doesn't suddenly want a magic lesson at this exact time of day for no reason. But he's going to play along, because tormenting someone who can bench press a horse is one of the few reliable amusements of his new life. "Sure," he says pleasantly. "Saint-Tier water magic, gale force winds, lightning storms. I could probably submerge the whole city if I really tried." Her eyes actually light up. She seems oddly enthusiastic about this. Something is definitely wrong with her. He pushes further. "Why don't we go now? 2 hours outside the city. We'd have enough distance to do it safely." Her tail twitches. 2 hours? It's nearly nightfall. Monsters come out at night. But you can hear them coming with those beast folk ears of yours. We'd be fine. She's going to burst. He can see it. The elaborate excuse about overestimating yourself falls out of her mouth at speed, and he magnanimously agrees to postpone the whole catastrophic magic demonstration to their next day off. Victory. He decides to celebrate by changing the subject entirely. He reaches up to his shelf and produces the miniature figure he's been sculpting. A 1/10 scale Ghislaine, meticulously crafted, every muscle group rendered with what he considers professional skill, because in a world without YouTube tutorials, you learn by looking. The problem is the tail. He doesn't have one and can only guess. He presents the figure. Ghislaine looks at it with something approaching awe, turns it over, notes the craftsmanship, and then, "Where's my tail?" "Ah," he says with the absolute innocence of a 10-year-old who has nothing untoward on his mind whatsoever. "I couldn't get the anatomy right. Would you mind if I examined the base? Just for reference. Purely artistic." Without hesitation, without a flicker of self-consciousness, Ghislaine drops her pants. Rudeus's internal voice simply goes offline for a moment. What greets him is not what anyone would call soft. Ghislaine's physique is, objectively, a masterwork, a perfect balance of red and white muscle fiber, the product of a lifetime of absolute dedication to the sword. He touches it once, because apparently he said he needed to study it, and his hand confirms, this is as hard as iron, as firm as marble. He involuntarily offers a brief, sincere prayer to whatever god oversees muscles and physical perfection, thanks them for existing, and respectfully withdraws. Ghislaine adjusts her clothing, entirely unbothered, and tells him she looks forward to seeing the finished figure. Rudeus feels like he lost a battle, but he's not quite sure what the battle was. The maid arrives to call them for dinner, and Ghislaine ushers him to the dining hall with the urgency of someone who has been waiting for this moment all day. The doors open, the room explodes in applause. It's decorated. The tables are laden with food he's never seen in this manner before. Not quite as elaborate as Eris's birthday spread, but warmer, more personal. Every face he recognizes is there. Sauros, Philip, Hilda, Alphonse, the whole household assembled. Rudeus had, of course, known this was coming. He's not an idiot, but he's also at heart a bit of a performer. He arranges his face into a mask of stunned confusion. He looks around the room. He makes his voice go unsteady. And then, he uses a drop of water magic, subtly summoned, to make tears well up in his eyes. I kept thinking I wasn't welcome here," he says, his voice trembling perfectly. "That if I made a mistake, I'd cause problems for my father. I never thought you would." He checks reactions through his sleeve. Eris looks like someone punched her in the soul. Philip has stopped clapping. Saros's mouth is wide open. He's done too well. He's made them think it's real. In the ensuing chaos, Eris desperately seeks guidance from the butler on what to do. Rudeus pulls himself together enough to hug her and whisper a genuine thank you in her ear. This seems to unravel her even further. She falls back on declaring that of course she'd do this. It's nothing. He's family. Right, father? Right, grandfather? Grandfather, Sauros, has meanwhile reached his own emotional conclusion. War, he roars. We'll go to war with the Notos family. We'll install Rudeus as head of household. Philip, Alphonse, Ghislaine, follow me, we gather the troops. Philip physically restrains his father and removes him from the room. This is, apparently, a regular occurrence. Eris composes herself, puffs out her chest, snaps her fingers at Alphonse, and the man produces a staff from the shadows behind a sculpture. It's made of pagoda wood from an elder trent, a creature born from a fairy spring deep in the Millis continent's great forest. The crystal at its tip is the size of a fist, ultramarine, pulled from a wayward sea dragon in the northern Begarit continent. The craftsman is the greatest staff maker in the Asura Royal Palace's Mage Guild. This thing is worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. Alphonse tells him its name, Aquahatia, the arrogant water dragon king. Even Rudeus, who is genuinely, deeply moved by all of this, thinks that name is the nerdiest thing he's ever heard. He accepts it with appropriate gratitude and thinks he'll just quietly not use that name in public. The party continues. Eris talks at high speed about the food and the staff, and Rudeus listens and responds, and somewhere in the middle of it, she falls asleep mid-sentence. Ghislaine carries her off to bed with zero effort and the tenderness of someone who would never admit to being tender. Sauros returns eventually, drunk, and is gently redirected. Hilda gives Rudeus a good-night kiss on the head with the energy of a woman who has simply decided he belongs in this family now, which startles everyone, including Rudeus. And then there's only Philip. Philip sits quietly for a moment, his wine glass half empty, watching, and then he talks. He tells Rudeus that Eris has two brothers, an older one and a younger one, roughly Rudeus's age. Neither of them lives here. They were taken by Philip's elder brother, James, currently the head of the Boreas family, as adopted sons. Not out of cruelty exactly, out of tradition. The Boreas family's succession battles are brutal and political. When Sauros had three exceptional sons, Philip, Gordon, and James, they competed for headship. James won through patience, connection, and 6 years of political advantage that Philip simply couldn't overcome. Gordon was maneuvered into a romantic relationship, engineered by James from the start, and married out of the running entirely. After James took control, he ensured that Philip's sons would be raised in the capital under his household. The tradition existed to prevent losers from using their sons to fight the battle a second time. Philip accepted it. He understood it. It was the rule. Hilda did not accept it as calmly. When her firstborn was taken, she sank into depression for months. When her second was taken, she became unstable again. And when Rudeus arrived, the son of an outsider, permitted to live freely in the manor where her own sons could not, she resented it. Philip says this plainly, with no excuses. Then he looks at Rudeus and says, "But lately, after seeing you, I've started to feel a little hope." He's watched Rudeus manage money, manage people, manage the kidnapping situation, manage 3 years of being periodically punched by Eris without leaving or retaliating. He's watched Eris transform from a feral creature no one could teach into someone who can read, calculate, practice imperial etiquette, and hold a conversation without breaking something. He credits Rudeus. And then he says, "So how about it? Will you marry Eris and help me seize control of the Boreas family?" There is a pause. Rudeus, age 10, stares at him. Philip clarifies that he would do all the actual seizing. Rudeus would just take the seat. And if Rudeus wanted women, any women, Philip would provide them. This is, Rudeus reflects, deeply insulting. Paul's catastrophically bad reputation with women has apparently preceded him into his son's life as a sort of template that everyone assumes must apply. "I'll pretend you said all this because you're drunk," Rudeus says. Philip laughs quietly and lets him pretend that. Back in his room, Rudeus is still sorting through the implications of the conversation when he discovers that Eris, who should by all rights be asleep, is sitting on his bed. She is wearing a red negligee. He stares. She stares. Her cheeks are the same color as her hair. "I thought you might be lonely," she manages. "I was going to sleep with you tonight." Rudeus, who is 10 years old and lived his previous life as a man who never left his room, is running 2 parallel internal processes simultaneously. The first is the memory of his previous self, the one who would have done something terrible here, The second is the clearer, more rational voice, pointing out that this is Philip's scheme playing out in real time, that this is exactly how these power traps work, that taking the bait now is precisely the wrong thing to do. He tries to scare her off. "If you don't leave," he says, "I might do something perverted." "You can," she says, "just a little." That is not the response he was counting on. What follows is a disaster of good intentions and poor judgment on his part. He sits beside her. He tells her she looks cute. She does, genuinely. He pets her hair, smooth and cleaned up specially for today. He kisses her cheek. She goes stiff but doesn't run, and he reads that wrong, and his hand moves further, and Eris shoves him, slaps him hard across the face, kicks him off the bed entirely, and marches out with the door swinging wide open behind her. He lies on the floor looking at the ceiling. After a while, he hears her footsteps return. Her face appears at the edge of the doorframe. "Today is a special day," she says, looking at the floor, "so I'll forgive you." She fidgets. "Besides, I already know you're a pervert." A pause. "But it's too early for us. 5 years, when you're older. Then, hold it in until then." And she leaves. Rudeus sags against the floor, and, once her footsteps fade, lets out a breath he's been holding for approximately 10 minutes. He's grateful. He's relieved. He made a mistake, and it could have been so much worse. He stares at Aqua Hartia standing in the corner, and thinks about how she spent all day thinking about him. The party, the staff, the worry about the conversation about his parents. And he had nearly, "Haha," he says to nobody. He's a piece of garbage. He has no right to judge his father. But there's a promise now, and he intends to keep it. Meanwhile, in the Sharone kingdom to the east, a young woman named Roxy Magurdia is having the worst Tuesday of her career. She's looking at a strange sky, brown and yellow and purple, colors that don't belong there, that she's seen once before. It looks like summoning magic, she thinks. Large scale, in the direction of Asura. Could it be Rudeus? Her student, the Sharone kingdom's 7th prince Pax, chooses this exact moment to grab her from behind. She burns him to the floor with a spell. He threatens to have her arrested. She informs him that the Boreas family employs Sword King Ghislaine and that Rudeus is under their protection, which puts him beyond the reach of any guard the prince could send. He tries a different threat. She tells him she's quitting. He is genuinely unable to accept this. He had promise once. She'd seen potential in him, and then he'd gotten comfortable with his power and stopped improving entirely, while she couldn't stop comparing him to a 5-year-old who learned from one lesson and then taught himself 20 more. She can't be a teacher to someone like this. Not after Rudeus. She leaves Sharone. The prince attempts to have her intercepted on the way out. She disperses his guards and walks. That sky is still wrong, and she's going to find out why. Others notice too. The dragon god Orsted, alone in the Red Worm Mountains, frowns at the pooling manor and says nothing useful to anyone. The armored dragon Perugius, one of the 3 legendary heroes who defeated the demon god centuries ago, watches from his fortress and immediately concludes it must be a sign of his ancient enemy. He sends Aramanfi the Bright, the fastest of his 12 familiars, with orders to find whoever is responsible and kill them. Sword god Golfalion glances at the sky, then returns to haranguing his 2 Sword Emperor-ranked pupils, who he considers spoiled by fame and insufficiently violent. He forgets about the sky within minutes. And Kishirika Kishirisu, the great emperor of the demon world, with more than 10 demon eyes and the ability to perceive magic from any distance, watches the sky alone because nobody comes near her anymore since the peace treaty. She tries to declare her own revival to empty air and nobody answers. She's lonely and nobody is the least bit afraid of her, which is genuinely insulting when you consider the work she put into being terrifying. A few days after his birthday, Rudeus brings Eris and Ghislaine to a hill outside the city. He's promised a demonstration of Saint-Tier water magic, and now he has Aqua Hartia to test as well. The staff, he discovers, amplifies his water magic 5-fold. His practice shot produces a water ball so enormous that Eris flinches. Fire magic doubles in power, earth and wind triple. He spends 30 minutes adjusting, delighted. And then he looks up. The sky is wrong. Colors that don't belong there, swirling manna, more of it than he's ever seen. Ghislaine sees it too. She replaces her eye patch and Rudeus realizes, for the first time in 3 years, what the eye patch has always been for. It covers a demon eye. That's how she can perceive manor with such precision. She says they should move away from the city, not toward it. The manor concentration is highest there. Before they can decide anything, "Duck!" Ghislaine shouts. Rudeus drops. Something slices the air where his head was a half-second ago. Ghislaine blurs. The longsword of light, sword god style, Saint Tier technique, tip of the sword approaching the speed of light, and she still misses her target. That alone is alarming. She doesn't miss things. Facing them is a man in a white uniform with a yellow fox mask, Aramanfi the Bright, a dagger in his hand, one of Perugius's 12 familiars, capable of moving at the speed of light. He came to stop the phenomenon, he says. He thinks Rudeus caused it. Ghislaine places herself between them, draws her sword, Hiramoon, flat core, one of the legendary blades of the 7 original sword gods, and swears on the name of her master, sword god Golfalion, and the honor of the Dedoldia people, that they have nothing to do with whatever is happening in that sky. Aramanfi considers this. He accepts it. He stows his dagger and turns to leave. Rudeus starts to call after him. The sky turns white. A finger of light strikes the earth. The explosion isn't explosive, it's a wave, expanding at impossible speed, swallowing everything it touches. The manor, the city, the trees. Ghislaine runs toward them and is consumed before she reaches them. Rudeus wraps himself around Eris. That was the day the Fatoa region vanished from the world. 6 months later, Roxy arrives. She's standing on the highway, the greatest road in the kingdom by Asura's wealth and maintained for generations, and on either side of it there is only grass. The city of Roa is gone. The manor is gone. Every building, every shop, every home, gone. She finds the refugee camp. It is the worst place she has ever been. She has survived carnage and disaster, has walked out of scenes that should have killed her, has lived through hardship that would break most people. She has never seen anything like this. Not misery born of starvation or violence. Just grief. Pure, overwhelming grief. A man at the bulletin board screaming the names of his family, a priest throwing down his religious symbols and cursing the gods, a merchant trying to end his own life and being held back by strangers. Everything in the Fatoa region was teleported. The buildings were simply erased from the world. The people were scattered randomly across continents and oceans and mountaintops and sea floors, and some of them made it back, and most of them didn't. She checks the bulletin board. Rudeus, missing. Zenith, Greyrat, missing. Missing. Aisha, Greyrat, missing. Paul Greyrat, line drawn through the name, alive. Line drawn through the name, alive. There's a message from Paul. He's writing to Rudeus as though he might walk up and read it. He says Zenith and Lilia and Aisha are gone. He says he knows Rudeus will make it back. He says he'll search last because he trusts him. He's going to Milis, where Zenith's from. He asks Rudeus, or anyone who knows them, to search the northern central continent. He says, I know some of you may hate me for things I've done. If you do, scream at me. Make me lick your boots. I have nothing left to pay you with. Help me find them. Roxy reads it twice. Paul is a lot of things. She knows that. But in a disaster, apparently, he becomes the thing people need. She decides to search for Rudeus first. She will head to the Dragon King's eastern port and find a party going to the Begarit, or Demon Continent. She will find him. She is certain he survived, because she cannot imagine a version of events in which he didn't. She believes this. She realizes. The way you believe things about a person you only met when they were 5 years old, and they somehow managed to change the way you think about teaching forever. Far to the east, in the conflict zone, a perpetual war zone between smaller nations that no major power has ever bothered to stabilize, the Markien Mercenary Country worships a goddess. They call her Lane, Forest Goddess Lane. She is depicted wearing a beast folk's profile as a pendant. Her colors are red. She is the goddess of soldiers. The story of how she came to be worshipped begins 100 years ago, in year 417 of the Armored Dragon. Bigot Mercenal, captain of a mercenary unit, leads 10 men through the monster-infested Aegean forest on a suicide mission. The Markien Mercenary Country is losing a war. His objective is to attack the Dakuto Kingdom from behind, die convincingly, and make the Dakuto Kingdom believe the attack came from the Bros Empire. thus sparking a war between two of Markien's three enemies and buying his country a chance to survive. He expects to die. In the middle of the forest, his unit encounters the Bros Emperor's personal bodyguards. Things go badly immediately. And then a giant lizard crashes through the trees and a woman rides it down. Brown skin, dark hair, two beast folk ears, a sword that moves like a red blade and leaves nothing standing. She kills the lizard and the bodyguards in the same motion and does not appear even slightly inconvenienced. She asks Bigot if he's seen a red-haired girl or a magician boy. He hasn't. She introduces herself as Ghislaine Dedoldia, Sword King, and explains that she was in Asura Kingdom's Fitoa region when a blinding light took her and deposited her here. She needs to go south to return home. Bigot offers to travel together. She accepts. They have different goals, and both of them are going the same direction. The battle that follows is a masterstroke of chaos. Ghislaine tears through the Dekuto Kingdom's army, kills the king in 10 seconds flat. His dying command, assume the Bros Empire is attacking, is an imperial edict, and the Dekuto Kingdom surges into battle against the Bros. The Bros Empire, seeing a woman with a blood-red blade and a man in Bros armor fighting side by side, assumes she must be an ally. The Markien Mercenary Country, watching two of its enemies suddenly attack each other, joins the fight. Bigot takes an arrow in his left eye and keeps fighting. He watches Ghislaine kill the Bros Emperor, head off in one stroke, under his own banner. He laughs. He's still alive. Markien wins. Afterward, Bigot is celebrated as a hero. He wears a necklace of a beastfolk profile and paints his sword red. His men imitate him. Other soldiers imitate those men. When asked why, he says a goddess helped him. Ghislaine was difficult to pronounce for people from the southern central continent. Over decades, through accent and repetition and the natural drift of spoken language, it became Lane. And for the next 100 years, soldiers of Markien went into battle under her protection and prayed to the forest goddess Lane for strength, and had no idea that she was a real person who had simply been trying to go home. Whether she made it, Bigot never knew.